Every day, you essentially pay your dues by doing the harder thing when it's the right thing to do. Oh, here we go. Ellie, how are you?
Hi, good, thank you. How are you?
I am good. I'll say it again. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate your time. Not to date the podcast, but it is Easter weekend, so I know you're busy with family.
No, honestly, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
I know. So I'm gonna fanboy before we start, but since I had your sister on, there's been there's like a list of athletes that I've always wanted to talk to, more so because I've watched you guys compete and stuff, and I'm obviously impressed and admiring you, but also I just see the very positive impact that you have on the culture, right? So like you and your sister and Ellie Black, for example, and some other people like Chelsea Memo, like I've been really lucky to have them slowly get on it. So I'm
Yeah.
slowly checking off my list of people at my hit list. So yeah, you're one of the top people, and I think you have a really positive influence on people. So I appreciate you
Oh,
being here.
thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, there are a lot of things that I really want to pick your brain about. I think one, because I'm selfishly trying to always learn from athletes who have gone through their journey, and I'm trying to help improve my own approach. But also, I think a lot of people look up to people like yourself and your sister, and like I said, Ellie and Simone, and people who have really been through the journey, but also people who have been through a journey in a very crazy time in the culture changing. So I'd love to kind of just dance around a bunch of different topics and kind of like get your thoughts on it and kind of hear your opinions if you're cool with that.
Yeah, of course.
Yes. The first of which being one I can slightly resonate with. I did college gymnastics, and so I understand the grind of a long career. But I think, in my opinion, a lot of people really underappreciate how hard elite gymnastics is and how much it takes behind the scenes. And I think,
Sure.
particularly for your level, I think it's really hard for people to even grasp the 99% below the iceberg they don't see in training. So, can you maybe elaborate on what really goes on behind the scenes that people don't really see?
Yeah, so I feel like you said, I feel like a lot of people don't really understand like the graph that kind of goes on. But like I'm only 22 and I feel like pretty senior in the sport now, since I've been senior since I was 15. And I think it's just like it's just so much like adaptation, like constantly all the time, and like it just nothing really runs smoothly, which is like the most frustrating part. Like you can plan all you want, but
Mm,
generally there's you I personally have never managed to stick to a plan perfectly, like into run-ups of competitions or anything. There's always been an injury here or sickness here, or there's always kind of something. So I
mm,
feel like that's probably like one of the hardest parts, and like, and also like the constant like day in day out graph, like it can almost get a bit monotonous sometimes, like because
mm,
you are doing like the same thing so much. But I always feel like setting small goals always helps me a lot,
mm.
because then I can just feel like I'm constantly achieving. Like sometimes if I see the end goal, it kind of psychs me out a little bit.
Yeah.
So like the small wins help me a lot. So yeah, I'd say that's like a general roundup of
Mm.
like what we go through.
I'm gonna go out of my way and just say this early that was gonna be a large language breakdown between your British terms and mine. Nick makes fun of me all the time. So if I don't know what was it gruff? What does gruff mean?
Oh, grafting.
What's that?
like um like the day in day out like
Oh, all right.
work, I
Yeah, I
guess.
got it. Okay,
Yeah.
now I'm here. I'm gonna learn so much more so on the British terminology. I think my favorite moment of all time is Dan and Nick, and we were on a call together, and Nick
Mhm.
called me a Muppet. I don't know if that was like really insulting or not, but he's like, "You're such a Muppet," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And I just pictured like the Muppets and like the characters, and so
Yeah.
that's my favorite British term of all times. So I just want to share with that. And then Dan also, I called something a bop. Apparently, a bop is not a term you guys use. It's like a music song that's really, really good, like a
No.
proper bop. So I was on a call with Dan yesterday and I made fun of him about that. But yeah, so I apologize in advance if I stopped you and correct the terminology.
That's all right.
Anyways, back to the important things. Yes. So it's definitely tough to see behind the scenes. And I also think too, from my career, is I think when you consider how many, like, there's so many things you have to do at a basic level every day to just not get worse in gymnastics. Like, that's crazy.
Mhm.
Like, the hardest, even the most talented gymnast in the world, you have to work so hard just to stay at the elite caliber. And I think like there's so many things like waking up and like going to sleep, recovery, like you're taking care of your body and like seeing the right providers and stuff. Like, I think that's all the stuff that people like, let alone the actual skill work and the conditioning. But that's like exhausting, just that by itself, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like especially the last 2 years or so, like stuff like that has really creeped in a lot
Mm,
more for me. I guess probably since like we kind of hit lockdowns, you have more time to just like think of things, and like sleep has been like a massive like difficult thing for me. Like I'm quite a bad sleeper. Like I can kind of get to sleep, but like sometimes I wake up and I can't get back to sleep. And then obviously that like constantly impacts on your training. Like the more tired you are, the less you can train as well as you
Mm.
want to. And then like it just kind of gets worse. And then sometimes you get stressed that you can't sleep. So like stuff like that, I feel like I've had to work on a lot more over the past couple of years. And I think people don't really understand like how much of an impact things like that do have on your training. And it's not just about the physical work that you're actually doing in the gym. There's so much on the outside that can impact the training in the gym as well. So I think as I've got older, obviously like you start doing more stuff out the gym and whatever, like so yeah, I just think it kind of gets a bit harder like that, but yeah, people don't always realize. So
Yeah. I remember you said with Nick that you're a big podcast fan, and I'll try to send this to you. Have you ever listened to Andrew Huberman's podcast on sleep and like optimizing sleep for athletes?
no, I haven't actually.
Oh, so he's one of the best professors from Stanford, which is the top university for that kind of stuff, and he
Yeah.
is a sleep researcher. So his podcast has helped me enormously because I too am very busy and don't sleep well. So I'll send you that after, and maybe that will help.
Yeah, that'd be good actually.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing what like one half an hour of better quality sleep does to your mood, like, and even your recovery, right? Have you felt that if you like don't sleep enough or recover enough, like you're more sore, you're hard to get back to like gym and stuff like that?
Yeah, I feel like not necessarily just after like the one night sleep, but then I guess like if you're going into the session more tired, then like the
Mm,
session always feels more of a struggle. So then I feel like afterwards you feel more flat than usual. So then like
yeah.
I don't know, it's just like constant, like it's hard to then like get back into a good rhythm. But yeah, it obviously does impact your recovery massively. But like podcasts have been like a really good, like I guess like escape for me since like I'd probably say I started listening to them properly about a year ago.
Mm,
And like I love just going on a walk and putting a podcast on, and like
yeah.
it's just like such a nice escape to not be on your phone and just like be walking and be listening to other people. And it doesn't always have to be like about really like deep and meaningful stuff. Sometimes I just
Yeah.
listen to ones that just make me laugh. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I'll literally be in the gym, like on the cross trainer or something, and I will physically laugh out loud because I have a podcast in. And I'm like, this is literally the most embarrassing thing ever.
Everyone stares at you.
But like, I rarely get into it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think podcasts and audiobooks have been really helpful for me. I think I always listen to them for like learning and stuff, but in the pandemic, it was so helpful to have your brain kind of float away from the things that were stressful or worrisome. And like you said, just to go for a walk and listen to a 20 or 30-minute podcast. And honestly, how much podcasts have helped me was the reason I started my podcast, because I was like, I bet there's people out there who really want to hear something valuable and don't want to think real intense or study something. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, me too. And like I said, they can either be like really funny ones, or like I listened to this one called The Diary of a CEO, and he
Oh
gets
yeah.
like really good people on there. And sometimes it's like they're quite funny, or they're like just really insightful, and like and just like hearing about other people's lives as well. Especially because most of them are normally like entrepreneurs and stuff. So it's good to like hear their perspective and like struggles they go through and whatnot. So
I
yeah.
couldn't agree more. Yeah. And I think, again, being meta with this podcast, that you're probably going to do that for a lot of people listening to that, is like, that is the most powerful thing of podcasts, is storytelling and hearing somebody else who's going through something that, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like the way brains work is weird, right? When you're going through something challenging, like I'm literally the only person out of 6 billion people who is dealing with this. And then you hear someone like, oh my God, that's literally the exact same thing that I went through. So
Yeah.
whether it's like your experience with gymnastics or somebody else's experience with, like, I listen to a lot of stuff on psychology and mental health and like medical stuff. And like, it's really like, I don't know, kind of cathartic to hear somebody else go through a similar story. And even if they're not an expert, just share what they did to make them feel better. And I really like love those kind of podcasts.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
What are the top three you got right now? You said you got the like the CEO. What
Um,
else?
yeah, I like Diary of a CEO. There's one called The Girls' Bathroom, which is like two local girls from England, I guess, who like they're just like they kind of chat like girl talk, boy talk. So that's like more of a
Mm,
chill one.
yep.
And then probably say there's one called Private Parts, which is like I watched this thing called Made in Chelsea, which
Mm,
is like a TV show about people in Chelsea, and it's
yep.
like one of the guys who used to be on there, who kind of does it. And like sometimes, like the one he did last week was about he had like an ex rugby player on, I think,
Mm,
and it was really good to like listen to because like, it was also like funny, but then he was also talking about like kind of athletes retiring and like the
mm.
mental kind of from being on such a big high all the time to then like not having that high and stuff like that, which I guess I feel like I've had to experience quite a lot the past like over 2 years because I've not competed for such a long time. So like it was good to like I don't know, like you just resonate with them and like you can just
Yeah.
understand it. And like you said, like you don't feel so alone when you like hear someone else is going through something kind of similar. So yeah, they're probably my
Yeah,
top three.
and also too, it's cool because you're like listening to some of those things by yourself when it's only in your ears and you can think about
Hmm.
your own life and stuff is really cool versus like say going to a lecture, like going to a talk or going to a clinic where you're kind of hearing that story, but you're around a lot of other people and you're like, oh, this is really cool, but I don't want anyone to know that I
Yeah.
think about this. You know what I mean? The podcasts are good because they're like just you versus you. And I like journal a lot with podcasts too. I'll stop and I'll think about stuff and I'll
Yeah.
crawl through it. And I really enjoy that part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Also on, it's popped in my mind. So my favorite band is the 1975, which is a British band. Is that the
Hmm.
most American thing of me ever to be a person who likes the most classic British band? I
A
don't
little
know.
bit, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm in the top 0.005% of listeners on Spotify for the 1975. I'm proud
No,
of that.
stop.
That's good.
That's
I
great.
saw them in America and it was the best concert of my life. I'm a groupie. I'm a hardcore groupie, but Nick makes fun of me for that all the time because it's like the most American thing of liking like the British band.
Yeah, but then that's like a British thing to literally only like American artists.
I know.
Like
Yeah.
it is. It's just
What's
like you always want what you can't have.
yeah? What's the most classic cliche American artist that British people like?
Um,
Ariana Grande? That would be my guess.
yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Or
I'd
Billie,
probably
Billie
say that.
Eilish.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess
Billie
that'd be Billie.
Eilish.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Billie's amazing, so she can count for everybody. But yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. It's like I just want to. I'm going to London with Nick and with Dan, and I really want to find a concert at the O2 or
Hmm.
Wembley. And I want to watch anything. I'll see anything at like
Yeah,
concert venues. It's iconic. But I'm like, man, if I could land the 1975 in the O2, that would be
that would
legendary.
make your life.
Yeah, yeah. I would sell my left kidney to get a front row ticket at. I'm just kidding. I'm completely kidding. All right. Anyways, back onto the so you touched about recovery, which is really important, sleep and stuff like that. But I think your experience is really valuable too in longevity, right? Because you're obviously 22, and like, can you imagine being your sister? I cannot believe competing up until I was like 30. That
I
would be
know, I
ridiculous. Your,
know.
your sister needs like the most flowers in the entire world. But what do you think is valuable for a lot of people to consider in terms of a long tail of a career? Because we see like right, Ellie's 25, 26, Ellie Black, and who knows, like Michaela and stuff too. Like I think we're seeing a lot more 22, 24, 26 plus. So as the culture shifts a little bit, do you have advice to coaches who are rethinking this longevity tail now?
I guess I'd probably just say like when I look back on my career, I feel like we were almost like cramming a little bit. Like we were
Mm,
trying to do everything all at once. And I kind of don't feel like you need to do it like that. Like I feel
mm,
like every year we have a European champs and a world champs, like, but constantly was like, right, we want to make every European champs and every world champs and every Euros and every world. And it was just a bit like when you're in the moment, it's fine. But I guess when you stop and like kind of look back, it's be like why did I push for every single comp?
mm,
Like sometimes I would be like struggling with mainly ankle injuries. That's
mm,
normally what I get. And it'd be like, yeah, like we need to make this Euros. But then like when you look back, it was like, but why?
mm,
Because there's so many. Like it's not like some sports only have like a worlds every 2 years or like a Euros every 2 years, but we have both every single year. Like
yeah.
I feel like there's so much opportunity, you just don't need to rush.
Mm,
So I guess that's probably what I'd say. And I feel like you'd probably have maybe a little less injuries now if like I hadn't pushed for every single major so much. Not that I regret doing it because like I've always kind of got the results I wanted from those competitions. So I don't really regret anything. But
mm.
yeah, I'd probably just say like take it a bit slower, if
Yeah,
anything. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more too. And I think you look at the psychology of maybe why this is happening. And I'm really fortunate to consult with a lot of like teams around the world. So this is not just America, but like the FOMO is so real, right? Like people are so FOMOed
Mm-hmm.
out of like that competition, or there's a lot of outside pressure from organizations or governing bodies to maybe make all those check marks and stuff like that. But there's also like, honestly, not even from the organizations, but from like parents and coaches, there's a lot of like judgment that gets like shade gets tossed around
Mm-hmm.
so much when somebody opts out of a meet for the slower route or taking a pressure. I think it takes a pretty tough coat of skin to handle some of those outside pressures and kind of knowing why you're doing something. And so I think I see that a lot in really high level coaches like Nick, for example, and some other people, is they're able to kind of have a reason why they're taking a break from maybe a nationals or for a year when someone's say going through puberty or something like that. They can still train, but like rushing to that competition, if you can like kind of weather that storm, you can look back in 3 or 4 years and be like, wow, it was really amazing that we took that little bit of a break because you got through puberty and you got your skills
Mm-hmm.
still developed. And I think the dividends on that repay are like massive down the road.
Yeah, 100%. And like I kind of think like people are kind of scared of the judgment in the sport, like, which is why people don't sometimes take a back seat when they need to. But like when I look back, and like I think I've missed like one British champ since I've been senior, and I'm like, minus COVID years, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm like, at the time, it felt like such a major deal, and I was like, but now I look back, I'm like, it's one British champs in the grand scheme of things. I've done so many Europeans, so many worlds, back to back years. It was one time,
Yeah.
like, I don't know. And people's judgments are like what holds you back from doing that, I would say. Like, especially parents and like other gymnasts and other coaches, like they kind of see it as like a bad thing, like, oh, they're being lazy, or like they're injured again. And like, I don't know, it's just always seen upon as a bad thing if you miss a competition, but you don't have to be at every single competition all the time. Like, sometimes your body needs a rest, or your brain might need a rest. And yeah.
Yeah, that's a really important point. This is a question that I was going to ask later, but I think this is my feeling in the world of gymnastics. Like, I don't think every coach. I think the majority of coaches are amazing, and they're really great people who want to do well by the kids, and they're realistic. But as I get involved, as I was getting involved in like more national level things, NCAA's, elite, international elite. Like, sometimes some coaches in some places, I'm not going to say everywhere, but they have like this relentless expectation that kids are always full of energy. They're never hurt. They always do the full assignment. They never speak up. And they literally just toy soldier their way through these ridiculous couple weeks of practice. And I think like if you look at any piece of research on how humans work and how athletes and sports performance work, like you don't have this just like limitless battery energy bunny life, right? Like you can't do that. So I think in gymnastics, that's still an expectation that's unmanageable and just crazy to expect that a 14-year-old can do 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, and just never even like hit a low point. And so another reason I like talking to athletes like you and other people is because you guys are realistic, and you'll tell someone like, hey, it's okay to have a light day. It's okay to take a break. And so can you maybe speak to the importance of like that training load fluctuation and not just like gas pedaling the whole time?
Yeah, 100%. Like I said at the start, like me and my coach, we always set out like a plan for the week. And like there's rarely a time that we don't have to adjust the program, whether it's because I'm tired or because something's sore or something. And normally Wednesdays for me are like the worst day of the week. Like if I've had a buzz in Monday and Tuesday, and then I hit Wednesday, and always feel just tired. Like always, no matter what I do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is always a tired day.
Yeah.
And like, so we always kind of not lower the bar, but like just set it so it's like actually achievable, instead of putting like, I don't know, 3-bar routines and then failing all 3, and then you feel like you've achieved absolutely nothing. Maybe I'll just put on one, and if I hit that one, then I could be like, oh, we can do another one, or we can do one of each half, or I don't know, like something that makes you feel like you're achieving and not feel like you're failing. Because at the end of the day, like I don't feel like anyone at our level comes into the gym to not work hard. Like everyone comes in because they have a goal to achieve. And I think probably in the last, I would say 3 or 4 years, I feel like coaches have actually understood me in that way, like, and listen to me. Like if I come in and say I'm tired, then yeah, let's lower the program. I'm not saying I'm tired because I don't want to do it, otherwise I wouldn't have come into the gym that day. So yeah, I feel like coaches are getting better. Like some are, some aren't. But like, yeah, it's all just about open communication personally. And if you don't communicate, and if either party isn't like willing to listen, then it's just not really going to work. So
Yeah. And I don't know if you can think back, but when did you think that communication really started? Like how young were you when you started to actively have more of a voice in your, like your training programs and design? Cause I think like obviously 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds, it's really tough to get them to be, contributing, but you can still ask their opinion and see how they're feeling. But I feel like the older you get, particularly in the junior to senior transition, like every year is exponentially more maturity in some of these kids, young athletes. So at what point did you start to kind of have more of an input and communication feedback with your coach?
I'd probably say input that was actually listened to in maybe like 2017, probably like post 2016 games, where like we would write the program together, and she would actually listen to me and take me seriously and not think I'm just trying to cheat my work all the time. So but then personally for me, that's when I felt the most confident every time I've gone into a competition, because I feel like I've known all the work I've done has been good solid work. Like I personally don't like setting a goal of like 6 routines and failing most of them because you know you've got 6 and it's just too much to like kind of mentally achieve that day. Like
Yeah.
I'd rather set just 3, I hit that 3 and like be done with it, and like I come out of it feeling positive, not like I've just done loads of work that's not positive, if that makes sense.
Mm.
um so yeah, probably since like 2017 that I genuinely feel like I've been listened to in the gym.
Yeah, that's good. I wish it was a little younger, to be honest, but that's okay. Like, that's understandable. But yeah, I think you raised a really good point about, particularly about the, I mean, I think what as a coach, right? And I have so much empathy for coaches, man. I still coach and I understand like there are times when working with 10-year-olds and like, yes, they're legitimately just trying to cheat and get out of doing more leg
Mm,
lifts. Like, let's be honest, like this
yeah,
happens. This is not,
of
this is
course it
not how to work.
happens.
Yeah, of course it does, right? I did it too. I hung half pull up for my coach was like, right. But in that situation though, like I think the one thing that my coach was really great about and that I try to pass on and that I think a lot of great coaches do is even in those situations, you have to like outline how, okay, like make your choice, do your half pull-ups, don't run, don't do whatever you want to do, but like your choices have consequences. And so that
Yeah,
sometimes
of
they're good and
course.
sometimes they're bad. And
Hmm.
sometimes I think in gymnastics, we need to shift away from like the insta fear judgment punishment model into like the, okay, do what you want. In 6 weeks, we'll have a conversation when maybe bars doesn't go great or when you're not
Hmm.
really happy with your performance. And I think that is a longer, more patient tale, but that's like this
Yeah.
I think natural consequences that I think would be much more effective in terms of
Mhm.
like, yelling at a kid because they're not doing pull-ups.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like I've done some coaching like from the odd time to time and generally with like 10, 11, 12 year olds. And like I kind of like approach it the same. Like I remember they were doing like series on beam one time, like flick, flick, lays. And then one of them was just like, I just don't want to do it today. And I went, okay, if you don't want to do it, that's fine. But the others will start to come ahead of you. And then as soon as you say something like that, I feel like they're like, oh, instead of just like getting shouted at for not doing it,
Mm,
or like I don't know, I just feel like there definitely needs to be a different approach. But I agree with you that is like definitely a slower approach, and like I feel like if coaches are going to start being more like that, I think gymnasts will start to develop like later, not as early. But I don't think that's a bad thing. But
right.
like when I look back on it, I'm like, how on earth was I like on European and world stages when I was 15 with all that pressure actually
Right.
competing well? Like I was 15, like I didn't even know my own self when I was 15. Like
Yeah.
it's just crazy that you could like go up there and do all of that under that pressure. So yeah.
I agree. Yeah. And I think the first thing I want to tease before I come back to that point is I think that concept that I talk to people about, which is like an emotional catalyst, is the most potent thing to get someone to change their behavior, right? If you most times when you do something and you shoot for a goal, you do something that you know is like not right, like oh, like it hits you at a gut level. I always think about like
Mhm.
when my dad was more disappointed in me than mad if I did something dumb. Like he wasn't
Yeah.
upset, he wasn't angry. He was just like, come on, I taught you better than that. I'm like, God damn it, Dad. It's like, and it hits you really hard, right? And I think a lot of gymnasts in such a high pressure sport, like you mentioned, it already sucks to bomb a meet or not do well or have something happen. Like 9 times out of 10, those athletes are already crushing themselves inside mentally. So like you coming
Yeah.
down and like adding salt in the wound is not beneficial. But I think that what differentiates really amazing coaches from coaches that are more mediocre are those that step in there and kind of guide that fall and guide like, hey, it's going to
Yeah.
be okay, we're going to make it, but like let's have a moment, let's get through this safely, and then let's pause and reflect about like how did we get to this path. And if you don't
Hmm.
want the same outcome, you have to make different choices, right?
Yeah. 100%.
And on that, you mentioned about the aspect with being like 15 years old in such a high pressure stage, and I think that is another kind of tails on the question of like longevity and long term stuff, because there's obviously the physical side of like the dangers of pushing a 12 to 15-year-old going through puberty, but like
Yeah.
mentally, man, like mentally it is like it is brutal on a young athlete
Mm.
to expect them to perform routines at 14, 15 years old. So I don't know, you
Mm.
said you're reflecting back on that now. Would you approach that differently? Do you think there should be some changes in place? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I think the mental strain is worse than the physical strain sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I'd probably say like I said in the moment, like I literally like I don't know. It's like you don't really realize what's going on. Like you don't realize how much pressure it is until you don't have it.
Mm,
Like I said, I haven't had that kind of pressure for like 2 years now. So like reflecting on it, it's like, gosh, like how did I deal with that at such a young age? And like you said, the longevity of it, I feel like it kind of leads people to kind of have that crash because it's
mm,
like so intense all the time. Like at some point you're gonna crash.
mm.
Like you can't be under that pressure all the time. um but I don't know, like I just think it should just all be delayed. Like like I said, like I didn't know myself when I was 15. Like it was kind of just like I was in like automatic mode, and it was just like go 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 all the time. It was almost like you weren't like processing things
Mm.
properly.
Hmm.
And like you say, like I don't know how to explain it properly, but I kind of know what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say.
you kind of just like
um,
you just go, right? You just have
yeah,
go mode, right? It's just like a
yeah,
light
you
switch that
do.
turns on and off. Like I remember like raising my hand to salute for the judge, and it was just like a trigger would flip, and I'd be like, all right, and then I black out, and I'd be done my routine. That's how I
Yeah,
felt sometimes, you know?
yeah, it is like Becky is like a really like technical person. She like talks herself literally through every single skill of the routine all the time. Whereas I remember when I was 15, I definitely didn't do that. I was literally like arm up, pray, let's go. Like like that's kind of
You
what
should
it
make that that
was.
should be a double Downey's Leo that comes out. I'm up, right?
But genuinely, like, because you've done so many routines back then. Like, I can't do the amount of routines now that I did when I was 15,
Yeah.
obviously. But like, so like now, like my work is more smaller numbers and quality, whereas then it was like drill, 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 like
Mm,
into you till it was like it was automatic, like go mode. And
mm.
that's just like what it was, probably until after like the 2016 games, really. So yeah, like again, I just think if all of it was later, you'd definitely have like more longevity in the sport for sure.
Yeah, right. Because you have so much more. I think about the years of my life, like particularly like 14, 15, 16, and 17. Like every year was a massive change in mental maturity for me to understand what my training was like and what I was doing and how to cope with my
Hmm.
emotions and process. So I think that like every year you get older, that you can teach those skill sets to athletes with either mental health providers or sports psychologists or whoever. Like it's very, very helpful for someone to, be able to do that. And like I definitely empathize with coaches. Like I understand that you do have to do so many that you feel as though it's like automatic and you can trust your training, but not to
Hmm.
the point of like dissociating and like not not even being present. So
Yeah,
probably a better marriage between those two than just that.
yeah, for sure. And I felt like that wasn't really met, like I said, until like after the games. Like that was probably when I started to understand my gymnastics, and I could go into competitions knowing I would hit because I understood like the skills and what I was doing, and I know how many times I'd confidently hit it in training. Whereas before it was just like trained to kind of like die basically because it was like so brutal,
Mm.
and like whoever makes it out alive is who makes the team.
Yeah,
That's
it's
kind of what it
terrible.
was. So it was
Yeah.
like you just didn't really like process your work properly, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean, we make a light of that, we laugh at that, but like, there's so many older programs that literally were like that. It felt like survival of the fittest, right? It felt like
Yeah,
even at competitions, it was like whoever the last four girls who can stand up on a podium, you guys can get the medals. Because I feel like that, like in NCAA sometimes too, it's like absolute carnage throughout season, and like the
yeah,
band-aids and like bubble gum are keeping people together. And like, I
yeah,
really don't want the sport to be like that. It should be a
yeah.
much different approach.
Hmm.
And I think too, one thing I've learned from Nick that's really important in this conversation is how you can train high level skills without competing them, right? Like just because you're trying to get a double pike or to catch up or whatever, like it doesn't mean you have to compete them right away. I think a lot of this comes
Yeah,
down to like your Chenkos and like kind of like double pikes on floor and stuff, or like high level key passes. Like you can develop the athlete and train those things and have those in your back pocket, but then pull them out maybe 15, 16 when they go through puberty. And that's really
yeah.
important. The other thing that I think you guys, you and Ellie, I'm sorry, you and Becky really demonstrate well is like the about of having a team around you of
Hmm.
people who can help you with their expertise. And I'm sure you guys got this when you were younger too, but like that is one of the most beneficial things is to have somebody who's like a great strength coach and a great nutritionist and a great mental health provider. And I know finances are tough with that, but like if you have a collection of people that you can lean on when you need them, like I think that is super valuable to get somebody longevity wise.
Yeah, 100%. Like at the end of the day, the coach can't do everything. They can't be the physio, they can't be the psychologist, they can't be the nutritionist. And I felt like years ago, that's what they tried to be. They tried to be all of that, and one person can't do all of that.
Mm,
It's like now, like I said, I have a team around me. Like I go to my coach for gym skills, I go to my psychologist. If I need psychology work, I go to the nutritionist for nutrition. Like everyone can't do everything, and I think that's just like the much better approach. Like
mm,
if I ever have an injury, like before it'd be like the coach was trying to patch you up and trying to like alter your training, whereas now like if you get a little niggle, you go to the physio, you see what like they advise, and then you can alter your training from there.
mm.
So like I said, finances are kind of hard with that. Like we are lucky enough to have it all through British Gymnastics,
Right.
whereas not everyone is. So yeah, it is difficult like that. So
Yeah, well, I think the blessing of the internet too is that like there is so many people online who are offering out really great free advice if it's not someone you
mhm.
can go see right away. So that's definitely a blessing of the internet age. Is there's so much information kind of being put online. So at least if you can't, get direct services, you can kind of do your own research a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And like my coach now, I know she's done like a lot of work with psychologists to like help better herself and
Mm,
working on herself to be a better coach as well. And I think that's like one of the best things like she's ever done. Like she's probably the coach who's understood me the most in my whole career. And I'm 22. Like sometimes I feel like, gosh, if I'd had her when I was, don't know, 16, maybe like things just would have been a little bit better. But I guess like, yeah, everything
yeah.
just, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot about that too. As a younger, much more naive and larger ego coach, I definitely was like, I'm doing it all. I can figure it out. Like, let me do it all. But I
Mm,
look back at like 10 years ago about like, man, how much better it would have been for the athletes and how much less stressful my life would have been if I did like spend a couple hours with a strength coach and see what they thought, or spend a couple hours with a nutritionist and kind of get their
yeah.
their ideas. Like, I think that's really, I think a lot of really great coaches do this, but also a lot of coaches don't realize how much it would make their stress levels go down. Like, it's so
Yeah.
stressful to try to do all of that for an athlete. So if you can find people you rely on and just kind of, work together, like it makes everybody's life so much easier.
Yeah, definitely.
I also want to say that I think that niggles might be my second favorite word now behind Muppets. I just that might be number two. Like I was trying not to laugh, but that's a
I don't
fantastic.
like to call them injuries because
I
I've
know.
multiple injuries. I don't want to add any more to this, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I always just tell patients that things are cranky. I'm like, yeah, you just look a little cranky right now. Your knee's a little
yeah,
cranky right now.
yeah,
But
that makes
niggles,
sense.
I might say niggles now in the clinic. On the point of injuries and like anxiety and stress and stuff is how do you think you've learned over the years to maybe cope with some of those things? Because what comes to my mind is definitely the anxiety and the stress of training and competitions, but also I think social media is a blessing and a curse because it has given us a tool to help do so many things and find inspirational people, but also man, if I was a young 13 to 15-year-old girl and I was trying to train and constantly looking on Instagram at everybody else's skills and looking at TikToks of who's doing what, I would be not happy. So I'm curious
Mhm,
your advice to like some of the younger athletes, particularly females. I think it's tougher for on social media, but how to kind of manage some of that stuff.
mhm. Okay, I'd probably say like with like anxiety, I probably never really experienced it until like 2019, and I don't really know why that was. Like I felt like it probably came into action like at the Europeans. Like it was kind of like the first time I was going into a competition with holding a title and like having to try and retain it.
Yeah.
And like I remember being like in the warm up gyms, and my training had been great beforehand. There was really not much that had gone wrong, to be honest, which was rare for me.
It's going too well. It's going too well.
But like I was confident going in. I remember just being in the warm up halls, and I was just like, I'm so tired. Like I literally don't feel like I can do this. Like I just feel like really like nervous and panicky. And my coach was like, "Why?" And I was like, "I don't know." Like I didn't really know like what it was. I just felt like off. And then she was like we kind of took the approach to the competition. I think I started on vault, and she was like, "Well, like it was an individual comp, so like I didn't have to do the all around." She was like, "Well, just do it piece by piece. Like if you like get to vault, like you can do vault. So let's get that out of the way and just take it from there." And I was really going like piece by piece. And but yeah, that I never really experienced anything. Like I kind of felt a bit psyched out and a bit like just anxious about like the outcome
Mm,
really. And like I think just the kind of way to deal with it, like I think we had our psychologist there at the time, so he just kind of came up to me and had like a little quick chat in the warm up hall, and he was just um like, are you feeling okay and stuff? And I was just like, yeah, I don't really know like what's going on. And then he kind of said like, do you feel worried about like retaining your title? And I went, well, now you mention it, like, yeah, a little bit, but
mm,
like I didn't really think of it like that. But like in the back of your head, like it's there, like so I guess yeah, that kind of came into play there. And luckily I had my psychologist there to just have like a little chat with. And I think I had a bit of a similar experience at the 2019 Worlds as well, because I was going in knowing I had big potential, and I kind of just crumbled, like, especially on my qualification day, it was terrible. Um, but like, I never normally go into competitions putting too much expectation on myself. And I think I don't really know why, but I did. And like I think the anxiety just like got the better of me.
mm.
But yeah, working through it, it's not easy at all. Like there's like just so much that goes into like having anxiety. It's ridiculous, which I don't think people quite understand. So like working through it, it's just learning with like trying to get coping strategies and
Mm.
things that help you. And yeah, everybody's different. So
Yeah, and I think it's interesting from hearing that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but like it sounds like most of the things that were the most challenging to spike your anxiety were internal. They weren't like somebody was putting the pressure on you. It was the thoughts that
yeah.
you had in your own head. And so that's usually what I think a lot of people take good advice for and why you should work with psychology, because 9 times out of 10, it's the demons in your own ears and not the ones that are coming from outside. So like a lot of this stuff is self-generated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And like you said, it was all internal. Like there was no one being like, you need to go and retain your title, you need to go and do this at the world champs, blah blah blah. Because I think my coaches know that doesn't really work for me. Like putting
Mm.
pressure on me like that doesn't work. It just
Yeah.
psychs me out. But like I had like my own like, what do you call it? Like my own expectations.
Mm.
So yeah, it was just like, I guess like I just didn't realize I was putting that pressure on myself.
Mm.
Which when you look back, it's kind of annoying, but like you say, like you learn from your mistakes, don't you? So
Yeah. And with that on mind, like, so obviously now that you're a little older, you're probably much more mature around social media and not being too caught up in everybody else. But when you were younger, was that something you struggled with, or like, Instagram and stuff like that, seeing that, or was that not really an issue you had?
I've never really been like that too much. I've always tried to just like focus on what I'm doing because I can't control what anyone else is doing.
Sure.
So I've never really been like the kind like if I see someone doing like a double double on floor, like I don't feel like oh like I need to go and like kind of do that and I need to be better and I need to do this. I've always just tried to stay in my own lane, but I'd probably say that actually got worse as I got older. Like when I was younger, like
Honesty here, honesty on the
yeah.
podcast.
Like honestly, like when I was younger, I'd just look at it and be like, but like as I got older, I say it's worse around like competition times.
Sure.
Like, and it's not so much seeing other girls like doing stuff. It's more like just irrelevant people having their opinions on you. And like when like I don't know, once you hear someone say it, then you're like, oh, like forget it. But then like if someone else joins in, then like you kind of start to like not believe it, but like it just gets to you a little bit. And like a lot of people, I think it was around like the 2019 Worlds time. I remember after my qualification, because I had a terrible qualification day, minus fault. So many people were like, she shouldn't have made the team, she shouldn't have been this, she shouldn't have done that. And I was just like, like I don't like it, just like on top of me already feeling crap about myself and not doing a good competition, like that was just like, oh, like now everyone else thinks I did crap and like I didn't do it on purpose. And like I don't know, like yeah, it just gets to you. But whereas when I was younger, I don't feel like it got to me as much.
Yeah, I'm so happy you're
Yeah,
mentioning this, because honestly, like I'm going to put it on the hot plate right here. Like gymnastics Twitter, like Gymternet Twitter is vicious, right? And I think that like
yeah,
with like there's a very big difference between being a loving fan and you're allowed to have your opinions. Like that's what makes sports, right? Very big difference between being a fan and just honestly being an asshole and being a troll,
yeah.
right? Like there's some people who literally type things on Twitter around like so not to date the podcast, but like NCAA's is this weekend, right? It's like literally yesterday
Hmm.
was qualification tomorrow. And I love it. I work with a lot of colleges. I love the sport and stuff, but I cannot go on Twitter during meets
No,
because it's infuriating to see people who would never ever say these things to
yeah,
someone's face and are just riling off whatever they think in someone's like comment section. It's like, one, that's cruel, and two, man, if
hmm,
you get your kicks from ripping apart a gymnast who's worked their whole life on Twitter to like get a dig, like you should really appreciate like what's going on in your life that you feel the
yeah,
need to rip someone apart. And so yeah, I get so frustrated with at some areas of like Gymternet Twitter, because people just like you're a human being with feelings
hmm,
and you're clearly destroying yourself already on the other side of something that doesn't go well. Like the last thing you need is somebody like, in your like mentions like, oh my God, I can't believe she bombed again. Like, dude, like have a
yeah,
heart, please.
yeah. Like honestly, I don't think I literally don't use Twitter at all anymore because it's so toxic. Like
Yeah,
I think since kind of like all the Gymnast Alliance stuff came out, like once that died down, I was just like, I am not going on Twitter anymore because
it's
it's just
exhausting.
awful. Yeah, it's so exhausting, like seeing that all the time. And I was just like, I do not want to get caught up in like just I don't know, it's just rubbish, isn't it? And it's just like it just ruins the sport. Like it really does. And like even if people have those thoughts, you do not need to put it online. Like have your thoughts, whatever, keep it to yourself. You do not need to post it to like thousands and thousands of people. Like everyone's gonna see it. And yeah, it's just the worst platform, I think, Twitter is.
Yeah. I
Not
agree.
to
I
slam
agree.
Twitter or anything.
No, no, you're totally right. It's become like a curation tank of people's like hot takes that they literally type out and put out before they think about what the negative impact might be on the other side. And like, of course, it's a tool that you use for good, right? Like social media does not change people; it exposes people's true nature, I think. And so, like, if you go into Twitter with the intent to find a JPEG of somebody falling or somebody who bombed or something like that, and like, oh, how am I going to get a good little viral tweet off that? Like, come on,
Yeah.
man. Like that's again, and like I think a lot of people who are fans of gymnastics on Twitter, they do love the sport and they love being involved. So like if you were to go to a competition and you would see that the negative emotion that somebody showed, you would never say some of the things that you tweet about online. So I really encourage people to be mindful about what they put out because like you said, like you and your sister and other people are like, work your ass off, man. Like 20 hours a day go into this and it doesn't like you could do everything right and it doesn't go well sometimes. Like this is the way the sport is. So like the last thing that somebody else needs who's already having a tough day is your 280 character sassy tweet with a GIF behind it.
Literally.
Yeah.
Not helpful at all.
Yeah. On that note too, so something that I think on this whole social media and kind of involvement is like I've really watched how important your mom is to you and how like you've mentioned with Nick that was really important to have that relationship with her. And I've also watched on the negative side, unfortunately, sometimes it's like literally the coach is amazing, the gymnast is chill, everyone's cool, but the parents are like, whoo. Like I think that the parents are more sassy on social media and putting out spicy Facebook posts because they want to have something to talk about, like to Uncle Phil at dinner about how good Susie's doing at the Uncle Evan meet. Like it's crazy how much like parents will sometimes go out of their way to like have like dinner party fodder, right? And so I'd like to kind of break this up into two things. One is like let's just start with like the role of your mom and being a little bit like supportive but detached because I think that's a really important message for people.
Yeah, definitely. Like my mum's always just taken on the role of like just caring for us. She's never tried to be involved in our training like at all. Like I don't know how to word it. Like she's obviously like involved, but like she's not like interfering. So like she wouldn't ever, you know, you see some parents that literally like come in the gym and ask like how the kid's session was, like literally piece by piece, go by go. And it's just like it's kind of it is their business, but not really their business to know like exactly how everything goes and how every minute of the session went. But yeah, my mum's just always tried to like just be like a really big support for us. And like if we come home and like say like something has been like a really big concern, then like maybe she will like text our coach or ask the coach like if like anything was affecting us in that session. But she's never tried to like take over in any way, shape, or form. So
yeah, there's a very fine line between I'm not a parent, but like being a parent who cares for your kid and steps in when things need to go wrong, like truly protecting your child at all costs, and like literally asking if they made the Yurchenko, turnover more today, or if they had
yeah.
to like very different, very different things on each side. And I raised this question up in kind of this topic because I've been really fortunate to have a lot of elites and a lot of Olympians on the podcast and stuff. There's not a single one who's been like, you know what really made my success when my mom really was on top of my coach every day.
Yeah.
I think that really is what got me to medal ceremonies. You know what I mean? Like that's not how it works. Like, has there ever been a time when your mom like went out of your way to like document your entire life on social media and say how proud she's like that doesn't make you feel better as a kid, right? That's not how it works.
Like my mum is like very active on socials, but like she only like posts of like I guess like if we've done really well because she's
Sure.
just proud.
Yeah. Like
But
a good
like
mom should.
yeah, like my mum's such a like a loving mum. Like I don't
Yeah.
know how to like word it other than that.
Yeah.
She just like has like the biggest heart and is just always looking out for us. But yeah, she wouldn't like if we came home and said like we did a double twist on vault, she wouldn't be like going on Facebook like my girls just did a double twist on vault. Like look at them go. Like do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
she might like reshare our Instagram post like if we post a video or something, but like yeah, she's not really a bragger at all, like
Mm.
or like tries to like tear other people down in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, like I think if I had a pushy parent, it like wouldn't have helped me at all. Like because you can't come home and like just relax as well. Like I could think of nothing worse than coming home and my mum asking how my session was go by go, piece by piece. Like I've literally just done it for 4 hours in the gym. I do not want to come home and relive it.
Yeah.
Like,
Especially if it didn't go well.
yeah, especially if it didn't go well. Like you want to come home and like switch off and relax and like I don't know how some kids do it when they have pushy parents because like I feel like it just like
Mm.
I don't know would like eaten me alive.
They
Like
don't. They
yeah,
don't. That's
most
what
people
happens.
don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
most people don't. they're done by the time they're like what, 16, 17, if not
Yeah.
earlier. So
Yeah, and I think the important theme here is for coaches too and everybody else is like you have to be unconditionally supportive and love the person regardless of if they literally win national championships or if they have the worst meet of their entire life, right? Like that is what it means to be an unconditionally like supportive person. I think coaches can do this too, and parents can do this too. Is like your mom isn't happier when you do well at championships is a better, like of course she's happy for you, but like she's not like emotionally on a roller coaster of being really excited and loving you when you do great and then like, oh my god, I can't believe you, like I can't believe you're part of the family, like if things don't go
yeah,
well. And I think
yeah.
honestly, unintentionally, some parents have these huge swings in emotions, or coaches do when kids do well or don't do well.
But I feel like when they're like that, they kind of, I don't know, it's kind of quite it's very selfish of them actually if they are like that, because I feel like sometimes, like, so a lot of coaches are ex-gymnasts, and I feel like they can sometimes try and live out what maybe they didn't do through the kids that they're coaching, which I think is like really bad because like you
Yeah.
should, you like, you're coaching kids, you need to kind of put your emotions to the side because it's about them, it's not really about you. And like parents can be similar. Some parents are like ex-athletes and they try and live their life through their kids, and I just, and you can just tell which ones they are because they're just so obsessed, like, and
Mm,
it's not just like, they're not just like they're invested, they're like obsessed to the point where it's just unhealthy for like them and the kids.
yeah.
So yeah, and like I've seen so many girls and trained with so many girls whose parents are like that, and I don't know how they, I don't know how they ever deal with it.
You just want to give them a hug and tell them it's going to be
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Literally. Yeah, there's two very big dangers in either, like you said, living vicariously through your athlete you coach or as your son or daughter or whatever, but also like I see this too sometimes as like the coach or the parent's personal life like bleeds into the gym a little bit. And so like maybe some of those frustrations from home are coming that way, or some of the stresses of their job are showing up at the meet when they're just like yelling from the stands and you're like, whoa, everybody just level 4. So
Yeah,
everybody just calm down a little
yeah,
bit. Just
literally.
calm down. And yeah, on the backbone of that too, I think it's important to remember too that I think a lot of this is really well intentioned. Parents love their kids. Parents really want what's best for their kids. They want to protect their kids. And in the States, we see it this amplified more with the whole college recruiting situation of like, you know, wanting to get a scholarship and this and that. And like, I don't know if it's like wanting to get the scholarship because you know the kid wants it so bad too, or because you want to have someone who has a Division I scholarship to X school. Like, I would just urge people from like literally every elite, every successful athlete I've talked with the Olympic level says like my parents were unconditionally supportive and they loved me to death regardless of whether I quit that day or if I continued to the Olympics in the next cycle. And I think
Yeah.
that should hopefully really resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, like my mum has always been like that. She's never ever like, I remember there's been so many competitions like trials and stuff where I've gone and I've been like, oh, like I got a rubbish floor score, and she's like, oh no, it's fine, like you'll do better next time. Like she's never been like, you didn't get this floor score and you didn't land this tumble properly and you didn't do this. Like it's always just been like just love always. So
Yeah. Like, oh, I had a rubbish floor team. Like, yeah, you did. Like, oh, thanks, mom.
I'd be like, oh, okay.
So we're not going to get dinner after this. All right. That sounds good. That's good. Yeah, I think that's super important. Again, just kind of chopping up because I think a lot of times you look at the pieces of like, I'm always so fascinated and interested in like, what are the ingredients of having somebody have a really positive, amazing experience? If that involves an Olympic gold medal or literally recreational gymnastics, that's cool. But we should all be trying to learn from people like yourself who have these successful stories of like, okay, what went well, what didn't go well, what are the breaks and stuff like that. And like you see, like parents, a team around you that supports you, right? Like having people in the gym who understand you and hear you and communicate you. Like it's some of these like basic human level ingredients, but we haven't
Yeah.
talked about Yurchenko technique or flick lay technique or how many pull-ups to do. Like that stuff is secondary to this stuff, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Like, as like I keep saying it, but like especially as I've got older, like though all of that stuff is so key to me. Like it's almost like the technical stuff does kind of come second a little bit because at the end of the day, you've got to be happy and confident in the gym. Sorry, my cat is literally just about to walk in
Bring
front
him
of
on
me.
here. Let's see it. What do we got? Let's see him. Bring him on here.
Do you want to go?
Come on now. We got a celebrity appearance right here.
Don't hide now. Oh,
We
she's
welcome all cats and pets on the podcast.
she's hiding in the corner. I'm sure she'll try and walk across again.
Bring it on. I like it. It'll be a nice little like intermission. Yeah, I agree. I think that with availability of education and people like Nick and others that are putting out so much technical information, there's great courses, fig stuff. You can do so much stuff to get the technical stuff. The
Hmm.
best program in the world does not work if the person is not bought in and, like you said,
Yeah.
is happy and enjoying the experience. Because think about even at the younger junior levels, right? So say we're not even talking international, we're just talking like fun gymnastics, right? You probably
Yeah.
spend like 10 hours per week at the gym, right? And then as you get older, 15, 20 with you, it's like crazy amount of hours. Like who, it's like going to work or a job. Like, would you
Yeah.
go to a job you absolutely hate? No, you would try to find a job you enjoy that gives you meaning and purpose, that you're heard and you're like with the community you love. Like
Hmm.
these kids are spending 20 to 25 hours with these coaches in these environments. So like if it's a grind and if it sucks, like no one's going to want to go and they're not going to do any,
Yeah.
even if they do the assignment, I promise they're not doing it full heartedly.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and like as I've got older, I have understood that so much more because like it is my job now. So you want to be going to work and like enjoying the people you're around, being able to work with the people who you have to work with, and like it's just no fun. Like if you can't, if you feel like you're going to work every day and not being listened to, you would quit your job, right? Like you would not stay. So like it's kind of like the same thing. Like if you're continuously going to work and it's just so tedious, then like I don't know, like it's got to be sustainable. And like I'm so glad it has altered over the years because like it just wouldn't have been sustainable the way it was a couple of years ago.
Mm.
And like again, as you get older, you just understand things more and just know that some treatments just like aren't acceptable, and like why would you stay in it if you're going to keep getting treated like that? So
Yeah,
yeah.
like this is like everybody forgets this is a voluntary activity, right? We all
Yeah.
voluntarily do this, right? Like I'm involved in coaching and gymnastics and you're involved in training because we love the sport, we love each other and stuff like that. But like
Mm.
this is not mandatory. This is not like
Yeah.
school, right? This is not like like many other things. Like this is a choice that people make to
Hmm.
get a positive experience out of it. And sometimes I think we forget that sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
definitely.
and on that too, I think another thing that I'm 100% the poster child for that I love seeing you and other people do is like I think you have also probably changed and evolved the way you train since like when you were younger to now. One of
Hmm.
which is being quite more active in cross training and using like weight training and stuff like that. And so
Hmm.
I'd like to first just hear maybe when that started for you and kind of what sparked the crossover a little bit.
I'd probably say I started doing more like fitness and stuff like that when probably like we always did it like pre 2016, but it was definitely more gymnastics and then like probably 10-20% of that.
Mm,
Whereas now I genuinely would say my training is like a 50-50 split of
nice.
that. So like pretty much every day I would either have a strength session or a cardio session or something along those lines. And then my other session is gymnastics. So
Mm.
like I rarely do like 2 sessions of gymnastics a day these days. Only if like I'm trying to learn something new and I feel like I need a bit more time on it, then I'll do a little bit extra. But generally it's a 50-50 split. And I'd probably say that's been since 2017 time. Again, just like trying to keep my body strong and healthy and helps keep my weight down and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, and on that too, like I think a lot of people were in the very much the crossover of this happening to be more mainstream. Like a lot of college teams are lifting, a lot of JO clubs are starting to lift more. There's a lot of strength coaches getting involved. I guess from your perspective, because I mean, I was actually ironically yesterday, Chelsea Memos on the podcast, and we had this conversation. Is like they won't really listen to people who are outside the sport. They love to hear it from people like you. So like, what are some of the more tangible benefits that you felt? You said like your body felt better injury wise, stuff like that. Are there other things that you felt benefit wise from doing some more cross training and weight training, and like what things like that you feel are useful?
Um, well, I kind of got into it more. I was doing like a lot of like cardio work and like hit sessions and stuff like that. Probably only over the past year, I've started doing more weight training.
Mhm.
Um, they always tried to edge me away from weight training, which I never thought was necessarily right. But I'm like a more muscular gymnast, and they didn't want me to get any more muscular. But that doesn't always mean you're going to just because you lift weights, etc., etc.
Preach. Just my one-handed clap for you.
And so I was always doing like cardio and fitness and stuff, and like my sessions would be like an hour long of basically just like being out of breath for like an hour just to like keep me working. But I definitely do think it helped. It like made me feel lighter and faster in the gym all the time, and felt like after doing all of that leg work, I'd go to do a floor routine and it'd feel so much easier.
Mm.
Like instead of like building up my floor routine by constantly doing tumbles and like back-to-back routines and stuff like that. I could do the work in a different way and not pounding my body half as much, but still
Yeah.
like keeping my legs like firing and like fit and strong. So I definitely think it's like helped massively, but like it still took a long time for like national coaches to get on board with that. Like there were so many times that a coach would say like, oh, like you're looking physically fit, but I'm not sure it's really helping you like in the gym. And I'm like, well, that kind of doesn't really match up. Like if I'm looking physically fitter, I definitely am fitter.
Yeah.
So like you
Right.
can't just be like making this up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
It must be fun to kind of stick it to those people too, when you like, you do have a really good competition. So you're like, that's funny you mentioned that about that not
yeah,
transferring over well.
yeah,
And so you
exactly.
mentioned too, like so important is that you said like like your ankle injuries and stuff like that. Like you can't really afford to land short, when you start to get older and stuff like that.
Mm-mm.
I think that's a huge takeaway lesson too. Is like I vividly remember stepping into the corner for my last pass, being so exhausted and being like, well. Hope I make it. Like literally, raise
Yeah,
your hand and pray. I was like, Jesus,
yeah.
take the wheel. Let's hope I make it out of this. Because it's like just doing floor routines to get your floor endurance up is not the most effective way. There's many other ways to do
Mm.
that.
Yeah, definitely. Like, especially like I kind of work on floor now. Like, I know I can do my tumbles on floor. Like, I don't really worry about that. So I do a lot of floor routines on the tumble track.
Mhm.
Just so like it's softer on my ankles, but like a lot of people don't agree with that because they're like, well, unless you're doing it on the floor square, then it's not the same. And I went, well, I feel like it is. Like, I know I can literally, if I can do it on the tumble track, I feel like I can transfer over to the floor pretty easily. Like, it's not the tumbles that are hard for me, it's always the stamina. And like I know I can tumble, so that's never really a worry. Whereas for some kids, they just think they need to tumble, 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 tumble to be able to tumble, but that's never been like me at all. Like I've always just been a natural tumbler. So yeah, like building up my stamina through not doing floor routines helped me massively, especially with my ankles, because if I had to continuously do floor routines, I wouldn't make it to the competition because I'd have no ankles left.
Yeah. Yeah, literally, like your cartilage would be like dust.
Yeah.
But you think about too, like what may have, I mean, who knows? 50-50 is hindsight, or hindsight is 2020, whatever they say. But like, can you imagine if like maybe some of these things we're talking about now were started proactively when you were 10? Right. So like say the education, like there's a lot of issues with the educational systems inside of our sport in terms of like really good science-based things and like nerds like me translating what actually works into the gym, and a coach that's like trying to understand is not overwhelmed. Like imagine what would happen if like the new up and coming generation of elites now who are 10 in the elite system or the developmental system, if they got these things proactively when they were 10 going through puberty. Like I can't wait to see some of the long tail of this when some of the coaches who are now doing that with 10-year-olds, what that will look like
Mhm.
longevity wise and performance wise too. Right.
Yeah, me too, actually, because even like sometimes I feel like I was lucky because I always had Becky to like kind of
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
guide me through it. And I feel like she always tried to help my coaches and not push me too much to give me longevity. But even still, I feel like it still could have been done much better. So like I hope like when like the 10-year-olds now, I'm intrigued to see like how long they can like go for and how long they last, because like I'm hoping it's like a lot better even still from when I was that young. So
Yeah. And even just with like basic education becoming more available too, like, man, I would have killed to be a 20-year-old starting out coach with comp teams and like just have lectures to listen to online and podcasts to listen to
mm,
and stuff like that. That's like a big inspiration for me trying to share information is like, I would have killed to have like basic education around strength and conditioning or like cardio and stuff like that, because it would have
mm,
been so amazing to have with my coaching.
yeah, definitely.
And then on this, I think the last thing that you mentioned with Nick that I wanted to dig into is we there's a lot of conversation right now about changing the age, about trying to move up to 18 versus 15 and seniors. And
Hmm.
I think Nick has always been a really good voice of reason in my ear about like the reality of trying to get elite athletes to the national level. And I agree with him that changing the age would not just fix the problem. Like it has to be a systemic educational cultural change down.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. Like every piece of me says that if we can change the age or adjust the age and have educational pieces in place and maybe hold accountable some of the bad actors who are really just not really treating young kids well, it would be amazing to see what would happen like in people's health and wellness. So I don't know, you expanded on it a little bit, but like what are your thoughts still? Are you still in favor of that? Do you think it's too complex? Like what are your ideas?
Yeah, like I definitely do think it's something that should be considered like heavily, because I think mainly just the like not mainly, but like especially like the mental stress, like we kind of mentioned previously, like I don't think you need to be under that mental stress at such a young age. Like, I think like my first big international was probably when I was 13, which was the European Youth Olympic Games. And like, it was such big pressure. Like, it was on podium for the first time. We had like a pretty big crowd because it was like a youth Olympic festival. So like, it was like a fairly big crowd. And like, I think we had like a qualification day, we had an all around day, we had finals days. And it's like, gosh, I'm 13, man.
I was worried about like Saturday morning cartoons when I was
Yeah.
like when I was 13. Like literally, I just wanted to like do my homework and like skateboard and watch TV after the gym. Like, I can't even imagine what you were going through.
Yeah, and it's like, again, when you're in it, you just don't notice. But like, when you think like, if you just started all that at a way older age, one,
16, yeah.
yeah, like you'd understand more of the pressure you're going through, and two, like, I don't know, like it just gives you time to make it last longer, and like you said, you can understand it more. So, like, I'm trying to think of the words, but like you can understand it more. So like you can just like develop on it more, because like when
Yeah.
you're 13, it's like it's almost being forced upon, not forced upon you, because like you're obviously in this sport as your choice, but like once you
Yeah,
get to that competition, like
it's definitely encouraged though.
yeah, it is. And like, yeah, I don't know, like just when I think back to like being 13 and like being under that much like mental stress, is like, it's crazy.
Mm. Yeah, and that's another thing that I still see inklings of in the culture that I really want to change is sometimes it's not a direct like, you know, straight up mean or something abusive is said, but like the shade throwing psychological warfare aspect sometimes that happens among everyone. So sometimes it's like gymnast to gymnast, coach to gymnast, parent, whatever. I'm like, this is human nature. But like I think what is worse sometimes than directly saying something that's cruel is completely stonewalling someone when they have an injury or when they're not having a mental block or when they're not doing well at a competition. Like just cold shouldering a young kid is
Yeah.
neglect. It's straight up neglect. And like that's equally, if not more damaging than saying something overtly. And so like I really want to see the culture change around like say someone takes a nationals off or say someone doesn't go to a camp or say someone, you know, wants to have a mental health season and they want to take a step back because they're going through puberty, right? Like that should be accepted and encouraged in the right light to support someone through that journey if they have 10 more years to go through. Because I'll be honest, like I've talked to some people behind the scenes. I cannot imagine either having a daughter or being someone 13 years old in a leotard, going through puberty on a national stage, trying to meet all these expectations for all these people. Like that would drive me off a cliff. And if I was a dad with a young daughter, I would be like drop kicking people in the stands if they were talking and trying to make my daughter do something like that. Like that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not, yeah, like you said, it's not even just like the stress of the competition. Like you said, like they're going through puberty, they're being put in a leotard, they're being sometimes made to feel uncomfortable, potentially body shaming. Like all of that like adds up, and like I said, it's just going to lead to a crash later down the line, and
Yeah.
it's just it's not healthy like at all. And I just think like doing all of that later would just benefit that so much. And I just think like that's kind of why some people leave the sport damaged, because there's like just all of that pressure, and then a lot of people come out of the sport with nothing because they don't make it to the top. Like, and it's just it's not it's not easy at all.
And
And
yeah. And I truly feel, not to interrupt a little bit here, but like I feel that like again, 95 to 98% of the people in gymnastics are amazing people doing the right thing, but we're stuck in this like I feel like we're living in like this weird like Willy Wonka land where things are not like the culture itself is so rigid in their ways that like we're trying to claw our way out of this like weird scene we're in, but we can't do it. There's so many coaches that are national level or whatever that really want to do something different, but if they do, they get completely ripped apart by the higher ups, or the rules don't permit them to do that, or the college recruiting is so insane, or the squads that are expected from 10 to 8-year-olds. And so like I think it's going to really take some serious like overhaul for someone to be able to step into a new model. But like man, there's so many people who leave unhappy. And I guarantee that if this podcast, like you like listen to it and ask like your son or daughter or the kid you coach, like, hey, there he is. There he is. There he is. Cat alert. But if people were to like listen to this podcast or some of the other ones we've had around like nutrition and body image and puberty, and they were like, is this true? Do you think this is true? The son or daughter would be like, oh, you don't even know the half of it. Like this is like barely scraping the iceberg of what really goes on in our culture.
yeah, exactly. And like there's so many times that like I talk about this stuff. Here she goes again. There's so many times I talk about this stuff, and like people literally just say like, yeah, but that's gymnastics for you. And I'm like, no, but it shouldn't be. Like, why is it being justified
Yeah.
because it's gymnastics? Like, And like, obviously sport has to be tough, but like not in that way. And like, I don't know. I just like, I always put myself in like other people's shoes and just think like you said, if you had like a daughter, would you ever want them to be spoken to in that way or treated like that? Absolutely not. And like, would you ever want to be speaking to or like treated like that? Like, absolutely not. So don't do it to others, no matter if it's gymnastics or not. It's just like, I don't know. I feel like some people kind of just get blinded by sport, and it's just like,
brainwashed.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it's just a bit crazy to me. It's like they lose that like human aspect, and they just think like everybody is like robots, and like, yeah, and they can just go on forever and have no feelings.
Yeah, it's really a shame, right? And again, most people
yeah.
are not this way, but whether it's the Gymternet Twitter conversation or the pressure situation, like just because it's happening doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah, I feel like it's like the pressure. I feel like everyone gets wrapped up in the pressure a lot, and then they just like forget about everything else. And then again, like I said, it's not till like you kind of crash that you're like, oh, like we really shouldn't have done this and we really shouldn't have done that. And yeah,
Yeah,
it is a shame.
it's that fear of the unknown too. Like everyone's kind of being like, okay, well, if I do zig when everybody else zags and I go this direction, like what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my athletes' potential on the team or whatever? But like, I think the best thing that you can do is like, if you're a coach who's had a couple years under your belt, is like call or talk to or have lunch with the athletes who have retired, like, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and just be like, lay it on me straight. I'm not going to get upset. Like, good experience, bad experience. What did you do? What that was great? What was not great? What would you fix? And sometimes the answers are really tough to swallow, but like you'll learn a lot about your culture and your gym if you have those conversations.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like a lot of people's egos get in the way in gymnastics as well. Like there's some big egos that like whenever you want to do something slightly different or not, like just not follow the rules, it's like their ego gets bruised and then they like can't handle it. And it's just like, well, you expect us to handle it, so like you guys should kind of do the same.
Yeah. It's back to that whole, like, that shade throwing, that psychological warfare that happens in gymnastics. There's been some places in some environments in the world, I'm going to be that general, that I'm like standing watching it all go down. I'm like, are we seventh graders at a lunch table? Is it like, we're literally like mean girls right now. We're just gossiping about each other. Like, is this what we're doing? Like literally the level 3s in our gym are more mature about handling conflict in the way that we're like throwing mud at each other. Like, it's like, oh, you want to do that drill? Huh? Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. It's like, dude, what are you, 7? This is crazy. This is crazy.
Literally, it's crazy.
Which is terrifying to think about. But yeah, I mean, again, I think most people are amazing. Most people do well. But again, we're stuck in this weird game, this weird box of like this distorted world. Like, I feel like funhouse mirrors. We're like all walking around in a funhouse seeing ourselves in weird ways. But it is getting better, which is very hopeful. And I think conversations like this really do help accelerate, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, damn, I didn't know Ellie thought about it that way, So I appreciate you sharing some of these ideas and stuff like that. But I could literally talk to you all day, but I'm respectful of Easter Sunday and your time. So I do want to highlight, you guys have so much stuff going on. You guys have Leos, you guys have competitions, you have double downies. Like what's up in your world for the next couple months that people can check out?
Well, we've got like some new leotards that we're looking to launch soon, which is exciting.
Hand up, pray. Yep, that one's coming out.
Genuinely, I think I should get that done.
That's a good shirt right there.
Yeah, so we've got some new Leos coming out, like probably towards more summertime. And again, experience days are just kind of fitting them in as and when. Obviously now, like we didn't do any in like February, March time, because Becky had like not European, British champs, English champs and stuff like that. So we're hoping to like pick those back up, and yeah, just like enjoying having a business along the side and just being creative and doing stuff like that. It's really fun. So
yeah, where is it, like social media, websites? Where can people find all that stuff?
Yeah, so we have our Instagram, which is like the main thing we use. We do have the Twitter, but like we don't use it loads. But,
probably
like,
less after this conversation.
Yeah. So like Instagram's probably the main thing. So that's at Double Downies, and then like obviously to get Leos and stuff, like the Double Downies website, which is literally just Double Downies.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much for your time. I like truly appreciate your input.
Oh, no, thank you. Honestly, it's been a pleasure.
Yes. We'll have a battle with Becky to see who has more listens, and I'll tell you guys. All right. All right. We'll see you soon.